Hey everyone, it's me, Jamie House. I'm super happy to be back here with Adorama during Fashion Week to talk to you about some really key elements including into your photography or your videography repertoire for fashion that I think we often either forget about or just we set aside and focus on the more nitty-gritty details. But the concept today is definitely going to be about storytelling and kind of getting back again to that basic artistic element. We've been using storytelling in art for tens of thousands of years. So yeah, I'm really excited to kind of get back to basics, and then just kind of going over what how marketing uses storytelling these days, and how to incorporate it both into your own work for these businesses, for these marketing brands, and also as a photographer, as your own business too. Just different elements to keep in mind, and little things to play with in the sandbox, so to speak. But yeah, super excited to be here with Adorama, and again, thank you to Lumix for having me here today, and let's get started. Okay, so today, what's the story? This is something that, for me, the idea of storytelling was something that I had been kind of just forgetting about. As a photographer, when I would come up with new concepts for shoots, for both my portfolio and for other brands, there always felt like there was something missing. And I think that's pretty normal whenever you start to work with, other brands, different types of brands for, fashion, beauty, for product even. You kind of forget about the storytelling aspect. What are you trying to say? And who are you trying to say it to is something that gets forgotten about a lot. And when you get all of your footage back to your computer, back to your office at home, and you're going through it, and there's just something that's missing, it doesn't feel complete. Maybe you don't feel like you did your job as well, and you just couldn't quite put your finger on what exactly it was that was missing. And for me, over time, you kind of get into the grind of pumping out these photo shoots for brands and whatever. It was just something that I couldn't put my finger on for the longest time. So I've been making a conscious effort over probably about the last year and a half to really drive the storytelling component of being a photographer. And I found that it's been immensely important. It's helped me grow as a photographer. It's helped me be aware of more things. And again, you kind of come back home or to your office and you see the complete project, and it feels just that. It feels like a complete story. So yeah, we'll be going over that today. All right, so here is a quote I pulled from the great World Wide Web. Marketing is no longer about the stuff that you make, but about the stories that you tell. This has been a trend in marketing, or it's just something they've been concentrating on for a good long while, but especially since the social media era of the internet has really taken off, where not only have brands figured out, the power of storytelling, telling their own stories, their own unique perspectives, talking about social issues that they believe in, but individuals have been doing this too. And I think that's just really kind of that dichotomy is really driving this storytelling push that a lot of brands and marketing teams have been really searching for. Yeah. So getting your story straight. So here are some buzzwords that you have likely heard if you have ever been in a creative meeting, online with your brands, or you've just been around on the internet. These are terms that you've heard, and a lot of these terms are going to dovetail right back into good storytelling as a photographer. So brand voice. A lot of brands that do really well have a very distinctive brand voice. You're going to be able to tell what kind of people they are trying to draw into their company culture, if you will. you're going to be able to tell a lot of things about what the brand believes in, you know, the lifestyle that they're trying to promote and trying to vibe with, I suppose, by their brand voice, if they're good at it. Some brands that I work with, you know, have some of these storytelling elements that I'll be talking about. For instance, curated content. They'll have a beautifully curated page, but they're lacking some of the other storytelling elements that I think really can draw audiences in to stay with that brand. It's going to be top of mind more easily than not if they do have these stronger storytelling elements. So yeah, curated content, again, it's not the end all be all of having a good brand marketing strategy, but it certainly looks nice when you pull back on Instagram, you know, so you see all the posts and they see that they work well together. They're going to be a little different from each other, but they work well together. Aesthetic is a similar concept. It's, you know, are you going with the muted, you know, beiges and grays? Are you going to try and go really poppy and bright? Are you going to try, you know, it just really depends on what you're trying to pull your brand to aesthetic wise. Again, not the end all be all of, sorry, breaks going by. Anyway, not the end all be all of telling your story as a brand, but it's certainly a component that a lot of marketing people try to utilize. And then, of course, targeted audience. You know, a lot of brands will try and boil down who their targeted audience is, you know, maybe age range, how much money they make, you know, where they live, if they're living in an urban environment, if they're living in a suburban environment, if they're living in a rural environment. A lot of these brands will try and dial down exactly, you know, who it is they're targeting to, and where they are maybe in life, financially, physically, you know, all of these different things are things that brands are marketing towards and keeping in mind. So again, it's just some buzzwords that you'll hear that again are going to dial down into good storytelling. Okay, so the mindset of your clients and your audience. And again, this is kind of more from the marketing department sort of perspective. So brands, again, concentrating more and more on their brand voices. They are looking for cohesion across all their platforms. They want you to be swiping through whatever, you know, Vice app that we all have. Mine's definitely TikTok and Instagram. And be able to stop and recognize something immediately from whatever it is they're presenting you, either via ad or just via their channels. And that's always the goal of any brand. One thing that's coming to mind right now, like in terms of commercials, you know, immediately whenever there's a Target commercial, for instance, you know, they have these really elaborate color blocked sets. There's all these fun camera tricks, movements that they utilize, very fun, loud music. It's sharp and it's fun always. And like, it's just something that you automatically recognize before you ever see the little bullseye dog or, you know, the logo that they have. Yeah, no, they're super successful with their brand voice, especially in terms of commercials. And so as a photographer, you can utilize this information in one of two ways. One, for your own business. You know, a lot of these marketing strategies work great as a photographer who's trying to market to their audience. Using any of these storytelling elements both kind of shows your proficiency at marketing yourself, as well as being able to utilize some of these other elements of like buzzword marketing words, like brand voice. Do you have a brand voice as a photographer? Yes, you want to show your range. You want to show that you're able to do streetwear versus high fashion versus skincare versus like really radical makeup, or anything else that you kind of do, but you also want to make sure that across all of these categories that you work in, that your brand voice as a photographer, your voice as a photographer is showing through. And another way that you can use sort of these storytelling elements is position yourself as a solution for these brands. Again, you know, they have meetings upon meetings, week after week, these marketing departments that are just trying to dial down to these very specific things. You know, again, who their customer is, what they want their aesthetic to be, and all of these things. And so if you can present your work in such a way that it just looks like such an easy solution for them to bring you on board and integrate you into their feeds, is going to be a really good thing for you to try and achieve. All right, so 5, again, digital marketing trends to expect in 2023 that just, you know, popping around on the internet looking for trends that a lot of these companies are looking at going towards. And the first 3, while they're interesting, they're kind of more specifically for brands themselves. But the second 2, I think, are where photographers can really dial in on and help them set themselves above their competition. So niche content will get more niche. As a photographer who really likes to play in personal style, that's really exciting to me. You know, I was on a phone call with somebody recently, and they were expressing the concern over something they were calling cultural flattening, which I thought was really, really interesting, where a lot of brands, you know, all over the world, no matter where you are, everyone's dressing the same, they are wearing the same brands, and there's just not a lot of difference between, you know, someone who's living in LA these days, and New York these days, and then London these days, and Spain, and, you know, wherever else. There is definitely like what they're calling cultural flattening going on in the world. But this niche content will get more niche. It's exciting to me. I think it's maybe a little bit of a rebuff of this kind of cultural flattening that maybe we're all experiencing. To where it is okay to kind of stand out and be unique, and maybe not, you know, jump in the lazy river with everybody else. You kind of do your own thing. So that's very exciting to me as a photographer, because that's something I enjoy doing. I like playing around and coming up with new ideas, you know, collaborating with really great creative teams to come up with something that we're all excited about, rather than just doing what everyone else is doing. And then dovetailing right into that is the next point that the next trend that they earmarked, which was creativity on social media will be more important than ever. So again, that's just, these 2 go hand in hand, is, you know, creating your specific brand voice as a photographer or videographer is going to become more and more important. It's going to help you stand out against your peers. And, you know, it's not just stand out against your peers, it's work in conjunction with your peers. A brand's going to go to, you know, the photographer next door, so to speak, for one type of thing, but you specialize in another thing. And I think the more we can all work together and be utilized for what we specialize in, the better off for all of us. But I think if we all just start shooting the same thing, lighting the same way, across all of our brands, then we're going to really culturally flatten. Probably not the right phrase. You know, fashion photography. So yeah, we definitely want to lean into what makes us unique as storytellers and what brands do uniquely as well. Here are just a couple little screenshots of some Instagrams that have a really nice cohesive aesthetic feed, but also kind of you're starting to be able to see a story just from, you know, a snapshot of their feed. Over here on Reebok, what I think is really interesting is they are definitely relying more on professional photography and videography in their feed. And they're doing different kinds, like, you know, there's some soft lit stuff, there's some studio stuff, there's on set stuff, there's built set stuff. And it's beautifully curated, but it's telling you a lot about who they're targeting, you know, the vibes of the people that they want to bring into their company, and make loyal customers. House of Sunny, they're definitely a little bit more UGC generated or user generated content with their feed, but you can definitely see, you know, a mix of professional photography and videography along with that UGC content that helps them tell their brand story, who they're targeting. They're obviously leading into the Barbie core right now, which I love. but without being too literal, I think. But yeah, they're just doing a beautiful job with telling their brand story, I think. And then over here on the right, J. Crew, they've been doing a massive overhaul of their brand and their brand voice recently. And what I find so interesting about their feed, this little snapshot right here, I feel like I know the exact neighborhood of New York that they are targeting. They are making it either look very, oh, what's the word? Like it's something you aspire to, very aspirational. Maybe you want to live in Chelsea and you want to go to Chelsea Market for lunch or whatever. But like that's just very much so what this is reading to me. That they're dialing down just to a very specific area of New York and really going after it. Again, a lot of professionally generated content here on their Instagram, mix of video, mix of studios, some out and about, probably in New York, which would make sense, wouldn't it? But yeah, just another great like a good example of a brand that is really nailing their storytelling. All right, so elements of storytelling. Now, these are not hard and fast rules by any means. These are just a couple things, a couple tools in your toolbox, so to speak, that you can pull out and utilize given the direction or the challenges of each shoot that you are hired for or that you're planning for your portfolio. And then just really good practice overall, and having this become more of a thing that you do automatically, whether it's something rather than something you have to really concentrate and do. All right, so elements. Lighting is my favorite storytelling element. I love playing with, utilizing, just doing different lighting just about every single shoot, unless it's like ecom. That's a whole other thing. Just playing with different lighting elements, different locations. I love using available natural light. I love playing around in the studio, 1, 2, 3, 7 lights, depending on what we're trying to achieve, how I think it will help me tell the story of the shoot that we're accomplishing. But yeah, so just the different choices of lighting can really help you tell where you're at, what the mood is, who are you trying to appeal to. So this is Chloe. She's a model. She was trying to, I say was because she was successful. I'm not saying it was because of our shoot. I'm just saying she was successful. But she was breaking into the the Miami Fashion Week, the swimwear sort of industry. And so she needed some, because she's like a super bubbly and happy person. So she needed something a little bit more serious, a little bit sexier, a little bit more, mysterious, softer, just kind of draws you into you want to know a little bit about who she is. So yeah, we were definitely trying to build up her portfolio to help her achieve her goals. And I hope our shoot helped her achieve that. I'd like to think it did. But yeah, lighting, hugely important with storytelling. It can be sunny on set, if you have a white paper backdrop or a blue paper backdrop, utilizing lighting will help you convey a sunny sort of atmosphere, or a moody atmosphere, or whatever it is that is going to make sense with the brand you're working with, the campaign you're working on, maybe even the team that you're working with, the types of models that you have. Are they just very serious? Well, then a bright, sunny, pretty lighting setup isn't going to make a lot of sense. Hopefully the brand isn't bright and sunny and happy, otherwise you're going to have a challenge. But yeah, so definitely just thinking about lighting and how to utilize it best for your purposes, your photo shoot, your campaign, whatever it is that you're doing. Color and tone. There are so many ways to use color and tone to help you, again, bring your whole shoot together as one cohesive concept. For this particular shoot, this was a project actually for Lumix ahead of the GH6 launch. I guess that was a year and a half ago now. Crazy. So I had approached Lumix and said, hey, I would really love to do kind of a camera fashion side by side shoot click together. And so they sent me, you know, the whole GH line dating back to, I think it was 2005. I really should look that up. I knew it at one point, but yeah, maybe 2005-ish is whenever they started the GH line. Dating all the way, you know, to present day, which was, you know, early 2022 with the new GH6. So I got together, pulled together a team with a stylist, makeup artist, models, and our focus was fun, with fun angles, weird angles, both with the cameras and with the models, bright colors to kind of pull together this like sort of Y2K, and Y2K, early Y2K, because that's when the camera first, or the camera line first launched. And then just making it modern as well, since we had the GH6 coming out. So yeah, just kind of marrying the whole line of GH cameras together was super fun. But I used color and tone to tie together the model with the camera action of them with. So on the left here, yeah, that would be left for you. On the left, this is your right. On the left over here with Sid, with the purple background, I shot that with the GH4, and you can see up there in the, above her head there is the picture of the GH4 I took that kind of went with that. And so I used color to tie the photos that I took with the camera to the actual product image of the camera. So, you know, the purples are the GH4. Over to the right, Sid again, you know, that lighter pink was the GH1. Down below her, the darker greens, that's the GH2 with Ella. And on the right, we have the GH3. Again with Ella, yeah, just with the orange. To just, again, link the camera to the photo that took that to the photo. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying. But yeah, so color and tone, very useful with storytelling. Sometimes it's very literal, you know, took this image with this camera, same color. And then sometimes it's a more subtle element that you can use in your storytelling. Context and environment, if it's available to you for the shoot that you're planning or the shoot that you've been hired for, is so key to take advantage of, especially if you're given time to. Definitely location scouting beforehand, maybe 1 or 2 or 5 times would be helpful to take full advantage of context and environment. But here we had Dawson. It was actually New York Fashion Week, but the one that's in February, I think, right before lockdown. That was fun. And we had Dawson, and we were beefing up his portfolio because he was looking to sign while he was there visiting. And yeah, we just had a blast walking around. I don't even know where it was. Lower East Side, I couldn't even say, like somewhere. And we were just playing around with different lighting opportunities that our environment was providing, like the image on the right, where you have like the warm street light coming in on his face, and then you've got like the last moments of dusk coming in behind his head, creating that cool kind of split tone lighting effect that was just there on the street. You know, and just playing with different elements. Like on the left, you got that cool like steel garage door that was picking up different lighting from the area. And then, you know, your classic bodega shop had to get it. Yeah, so context and environment can do a whole lot with, you know, telling your story, or the, you know, pulling in the people who you want to pull in with your shoot, your campaign, your brand. Subject and characters. This is arguably the most important storytelling component, because it's you know, it's going to illustrate to your viewers who you are trying to reach. And B, it's what makes a story interesting. You know, without a subject or a character, there really isn't a story to build around. So having the subject and character is key. A lot of shoots that I've been asked to do, you know, where a lot of the like subject and character hasn't really been considered, they often fall flat. And you know, you can guide your client, and try to guide your client as much as you can to coming up with a subject and character to make your shoot feel more alive and it's going to play better. But you can only do so much to convince your client otherwise. Anyway, so yes, shoots that don't concentrate on subject and character can easily fall a bit flat, and a lot of brands will, maybe not ask you outright, but be not sure why that is. And I think, at least for me, subject and character, lacking that in a shoot is going to hurt more than help. But yeah, so like this is a lot more of like a kind of commercially, like JC Penney's, like Dillard sort of vibe. And the shoot is what you see. We met up at a park, and the guys played some ball after getting dressed up in these kind of preppy, almost like back to school sort of outfits, and yeah, just kind of captured what they were doing. Of course, we gave them some direction, you can shoot the ball, shoot this way, turn this way, so I can get, maybe the full shot. Here's the sun, turn towards me. But, just giving small direction, but again, letting them kind of play within their scene as if they are actors, and models to a degree are actors. And so, yeah, it was just a fun, quick, easy little morning shoot, and we got some nice stuff out of it. So yeah, subject and characters, ultimately important. Close-ups and details. So for this shoot, that is all we did, essentially, was close-ups and details, because the story, while a smaller, quieter story, was just here. And a lot of it was more like artistic components. So, line, color, not a whole lot of range and expression, but that was more due to the fact that she was less of a character and more of a subject, kind of like an art piece, if you will, in this story. So like, for instance, the middle one, my inspiration, maybe a little bit deranged, but I don't know if you're familiar with The Garden of Earthly Delights by Heinrich Bosch. It's a painting from, I think the 1500s. It's unhinged. And there's just, a lot of, if you want to Google it, go for it, but it's kind of disturbing. But anyway, it was stuck in my brain for whatever reason. And, just like cracked eggshell humans. And like, so we kind of made her a little bit eggshell colored. And then also the eyes there in the middle were like Venus flytraps was the inspiration. And Fiona, the makeup artist, completely nailed it. And of course, Aubrey did a beautiful job modeling it. But yeah, it was very much so about colors and tones in terms of makeup that were the storytelling elements here, using the teeny tiny feathers around the eyes, which took Fiona forever to kind of convey that Venus flytrap. So yeah, sometimes the story is more commercial, like the last slide where it's rather, cut and dry. Guys meeting at the park to play basketball, kind of back to school, fall vibes. And then here is a different kind of more creative story, smaller story, again, literally smaller. But yeah, just having all of these in your toolbox are going to be great to utilize. Another thing too, I'll say, is details and close-ups in shoots like the one that we had on the previous slide with the boys playing basketball would be great for your clients, like if they have a bracelet that they're trying to highlight. That would be always a good thing to ask your clients ahead of time if there's anything they'd like to especially feature if they don't already tell you. But getting details in the environment while they're playing, while they're hanging, while they're talking, of these elements would be handy for your client to have for sure. So details and close-ups. All right, and then movement and action is, I don't know that it's every photographer's favorite. And I understand why. It definitely requires you to be quick on your feet. But it's one of my favorite storytelling elements when I can utilize it. And a lot of that will depend on a couple of things. One, certainly your environment, if that's going to allow a lot of movement and action. Again, I'll go back to the white paper backdrop example. You can certainly do some movement and action on a white paper backdrop, and it might help you tell the story. But if you can get it done in a place, again, full environment context, all the better for it. Yeah, having your model do movement. If they're comfortable with it, almost always yields my favorite photos from a shoot because it kind of catches them in their less posy moments. I am not a model, but less posy, and then more real, so to speak, looser, more interesting facial expressions. Again, a lot of actors, models, models are not actors. They do a little bit of acting, but a lot of them can't totally shut off their model brain, turn for the clothes, and really act. So having them move around and then trying to catch those off moments can be really nice to help you tell your complete story with your photo shoot. The most important, in my opinion, storytelling element is your voice as a photographer. I think I mentioned before, brand voice is a marketing concept we can use as a photographer. Brand voice, your voice, same difference. And being able to be recognizable to people who are trying to hire you. To have a complete story, either living on your website or on your Instagram, is going to be something that clients are going to start recognizing you for, which is always key. It's always not what you want, because again, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to tell stories. So yeah, definitely developing your voice as a photographer. Be recognizable across the different niches that you play with or categories that you play in. Is definitely going to help you stand out amongst your peers and be someone that brands want to work with, for sure, to help them tell their story. All right, so I'm really glad this is not a drinking game, because if it were, the amount of times I've said story, I'll say it some more. So I, as a photographer, doing product, fashion, and beauty for the last, concentrating on that solely for the last 4 or 5 years. I was loving it. I was having the time of my life, having a lot of creative challenges, working with new brands, but there was something in the back of my mind that I knew I was missing. So I was an art history major back in college, and I was definitely getting the art concept of everything. I was loving that. Again, playing with creativity and collaborating with different teams and, pulling in their creativity and just creating brand new things every time. Was a true joy to me. It is a true joy to me. I love it still. But again, I was missing something. So I had my light bulb moment, I think, that was 2020. At the end of 2020, I got the opportunity to go visit Mexico, and we went to some Mayan ruins, and that's when my little light bulb went off. And it's like, I love history, art history specifically. I have loved it forever, and I hadn't somehow thought of pursuing that in terms of photography yet. So it lit a little fire in me. So I was talking to a friend of mine, Leslie, who is a textile expert and has worked with people like the Smithsonian and doing a lot of these expedition jobs and projects. And I was talking to her about it over a bottle of wine at a Christmas party, and just telling her that it kind of lit a fire in me, going to these Mayan ruins and wanting to kind of look into pursuing that aspect of photography as well, that kind of documentary, that travel aspect of it. And I could see her own little light bulb going off. And she said, well, as a matter of fact, I was brought on as the outreach director for a nonprofit organization called Around the World in 80 Fabrics. And I actually talked about them last year when we met with Adorama. But things have progressed quite a bit since then. So that's what I'll be talking about here. So Around the World in 80 Fabrics is a nonprofit organization that concentrates on educating, curating, collecting, procuring, and exhibiting non-petroleum-based fabrics from around the world, as you might have guessed. So they have a couple different pillars of like fabrics that they kind of concentrate on. They do like animal fibers, animal skins, plant fibers. There's a whole like lab grown sciencey element to it. It's wild. And then recycling as well. So almost immediately, even as we were sitting there talking about it, me and Leslie, over our bottle of wine, started brainstorming, and I thought about it. I said, well, you know, I have a feeling that Lumix might be interested in learning a little bit about around the world native fabrics and what it is that they do and their values and the stories, of course, that they're trying to tell. So we took it over to them, and just about immediately they said, yes, we're interested in pursuing this with you. So there's a little title, Around the World of Native Fabrics, featuring Leslie's hand. She probably didn't want me to tell you that. So Lumix very graciously sponsored me to start photographing the Around the World Native Fabrics collection. So this was in the beginning of 2021, when they had about 25, 30 fabrics, I think, in their collection. And so we were challenged with trying to tell as many stories as possible during the middle of like kind of the height of the pandemic. So the way we thought about achieving that, or went about achieving that, I hope we achieved it, was trying to make it look like we were in 25 to 30 different places but really we were in one teeny tiny corner in a studio, and again, playing with lighting, playing with context, playing with, you know, all of these storytelling elements to make it look like we were in different places, hopefully close to about where these fabrics originated from during the middle of the pandemic. And then these images would help them build their collection, make them look a little bit more professional, curated, and then, you know, it would help them invite other fabric makers, artisans, etc., to be part of the collection, kind of get in on the story, so to speak. So so we did that in January of 2021, and that was just fabulous. That was the best 3 days spent with Leslie, of course, and then the two co-founders of Around the World of Native Fabrics, who are Tierney Tees and Carol Dunham, and they're fabulous. And that Geo people, they're great. Best stories I've ever heard. So we did that for 3 days, and it was fantastic. But while that certainly scratched that history part of my itch, I found out that, oh yeah, this is something I definitely want to continue pursuing. It wasn't a one-time deal for me. So trying to remember what slide's next, y'all. Hold on a second. Okay, right. Sorry. So last year we went to Uganda to help tell a story of how bark cloth has been created over the past 900 years or so in the beautiful rainforests there in Uganda. And that was just the honor of a lifetime. Going with Leslie and meeting these creators, these people who've been passing down these traditions for generations. And then this year, we went back to Lumix and said, hey, we have a couple of crazy storytelling opportunities. We would love to see if you'd be interested in being a part of that storytelling. And I don't know if you saw the news this morning. We're all very excited at Lumix. I'm not at Lumix, but with Lumix, about the new G9 Mark II that was just announced this morning. Once Lumix learned about one of the storytelling opportunities, which was going to Morocco. And of course, Morocco's on everyone's mind right now, unfortunately, with crazy earthquake tragedy. But we had a unique storytelling opportunity in Morocco. And so Lumix actually sent with me 2 of the prototype G9 Mark IIs that were just so much fun to use. I was a huge G9 original fan. I love that camera. I still love that camera. And so it was a huge pleasure and honor to try out the G9 Mark II out there on location. And when I mean out there on location, I mean out there. So anyway, up next here, I'm going to play a little video that was put together by the Lumix team of some stuff that we captured while in Morocco this summer. See if I'm good to play. Okay. Okay, great. All right. I just learned that. Wait, what's that? I can't now yet. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let me try that again. Let's see. You still with me there? I even silenced it. Okay. Remind me where share screen is. If you know. I found it. So I am still sharing screen. Okay, great. Perfect. Share. All right, it's telling me my screen sharing is paused. Hello, hello. Anything. All right, you can see black screen now. Okay. Let's see here. So I don't trying to see where the control would be to system. Select a microphone. Just pop it in later, you think? Okay. Oh, can you hear that? I'm doing my house. I'm obsessed with this. Oh, okay. Well, I'll leave it alone. I won't touch it. So I had the immense pleasure of testing out the G9 I was tasked with shooting a series of portraits while I was on this trip in Morocco with these absolutely incredible, amazing. The organization I traveled with is called Around the World Fabrics, and they are an organization that specializes in fabrics and fabric solutions that are non-petroleum based. One of the things that I loved about the G9 Mark II was how compact it was, not just like the actual camera itself, but we took the lenses to such a small amount of full frame. So I was able to pack just so many different lenses of much lighter weights. I use the premium eye phase body mode for autofocus. Once you set it, you have to focus so much on focus is in the correct spot or if everything is sharp and just
interacting with the scene around you as you're photographing. The G9 is great for everybody. If you're a pro, if you're a prosumer, if you're a hobbyist, I think the people I would recommend it to the most are people who are on location. Like in my instance, if you're doing fashion photography, but if you're doing it out on set, it's very habitable in terms of acting light. But being an unobtrusive camera on set is sometimes such handy and overlooked tool because you just don't come off as intimidating. Going about the week and trying to figure out like how to capture each person in color. It's really exciting. It's made really easy with this too.
All right. All right, cool. So we'll just kind of breeze through a couple of these portraits that I shot with Lumix. They're on location in Morocco. And just some of the storytelling elements that, you know, I was trying to keep in mind while we were out on location up in the high Atlas Mountains. I don't know, just with all sorts of neighborhoods. So one of the team members is pictured here. Her name is Brooke Jude. She's a microbiologist, and her and the other microbiologist, Anne, their role in the trip was to sample microbes from around where we were at there in Morocco, and see which microbes, once they've taken them back to, well, the hotel, not really a lab, their on-site lab, if you will, putting them on those petri dishes there you see, seeing which of these microbes are color expressing, which is not something I've ever considered before this trip, that microbes could be color expressing. But Brooke here, she actually has a lab up in New York that concentrates expressly on color expressing microbes, specifically purple. And it's called bioluminescence. It's just this beautiful light back there. Yeah, so she was there just like trying to think, or what to, yeah, just taking samples from the soil, from the waters, and seeing what there could potentially be a natural fact. And that was actually the driver for the whole shoot there, was discovering, kind of getting back to creating a market again for natural dyes, and kind of moving away from toxic synthetic ones. But yeah, so again, just storytelling elements here that I loved. You know, picking up and noticing, you know, we've got a through line of that like royal blue with the little science stick things. Not sure what they're called. You know, a little bit of the royal blue there in the top right with just some string that that was used the clothesline, pants on Brooke, you know, just having that little through line, a little color through line blue. And again, those like really natural, rich tones that we were getting from the natural dyes there in Morocco. I mean, things like henna leaves, black walnut leaves, literally from right up the hill from where we were based most of the time. This thing called madder root, which is MADDER, that was used to get that really beautiful, rich, like earthy, orangey color there, orangey reddish. But yeah, so kind of incorporating a lot of these elements in both of her portrait and in the accompanying photos for that kind of helped me tell a little bit of the story of what we were doing there, and then her job specifically on the shoot. And this is Nina. We all love Nina. She was our host and our fearless leader on this expedition. She's based in Morocco with her two absolutely lovely daughters, Alima and Maimouna. And she herself, she's a rug designer, again, based out of Tangier. And she works with the cooperative that we were staying with much of the time there in the High Atlas Mountains. So the Ain Lua Cooperative is their name. Team of women who created this weaving studio back in, I think, the late 70s, and have been there ever since, creating these absolutely beautiful original rugs, some traditional rugs, and just really beautifully keeping the tradition of rug making there in Morocco very much alive, thriving, changing. Yeah, they were just lovely. So here we were at the souk or the market this day for Nina's portrait, and she wanted a picture on all of this natural, like untouched, undyed wool yarn. And you know, the tent that we found, of course, was just creating the most beautiful lighting scenario. So I said, you got it, Nina. That's exactly what we'll do. But yeah, just a beautiful setting. And we were creating quite the ruckus there at the souk. It was in a very remote part of Morocco, and we were buying all of the rugs, all of them, while we were there. So much fun. Here is Miss Maimuna, Nina's daughter from the previous slide. And honestly, like the location for this shot for her portrait, it wasn't so much a part of the story I was trying to tell, but the lighting was really driving me to take her portrait there. It was just, you know, sunset, beautiful kind of dappled light coming in through the trees there at this restaurant. But even though her portrait was taken at a beautiful restaurant there in Tangier, I was noticing a lot of the elements in this photo, you know, your greens and your blues were repeating from earlier in the trip up in the high Atlas Mountains. So on the top right there, that's actually a naturally dyed yarn, which is wild to me. And it's called woad, the natural dye, and it comes from just like weed that grows everywhere in Morocco, and I don't fully understand how it's processed to create this beautiful deep blue, but it does. And then there on the bottom right, you know, again, we're with the naturally dyed rugs, and there's Mia there on the left wearing the beautiful royal blue, again, the through line of color through this little compact story. And then this is Natya. She's one of the granddaughters of one of the original Ainlu cooperative members. She's beautiful, obviously, and I wanted to do a slightly more traditional, like beauty kind of semi-fashion photo while we were there, to kind of tie back into what I do here at home. So we were actually just in a public park there in Ainlu, and there's a little snapshot there on the bottom left of the town that we were in, her hometown. And then upper left are some of the sheep that are milling about the town. But what's interesting here, at least in terms of look at the more fashion element of things, is the cape that she's wearing is a traditional wedding cape that brides would wear on the day of they got married. It's a beautiful traditional piece you can hang on into your family for years and years. I think they said this one was like maybe 50, 40 years old, and it held up so beautifully. And what's fun too is like you see maybe the little yellow metal bits there on the bottom, just almost out of frame, and those jingle together, and that's supposed to ward off the bad spirits. So the bride is supposed to go into her new life, her new marriage, her new home, without any bad spirits about her. So it was just a cool little storytelling element for sure. All right, and then this is Adija. She was just a light. We loved her. She's again one of the, if not the original founding members of the Ainlu Cooperative there in the high Atlas Mountains. She loves color purple, which is fantastic. And she invited us into her home. We did some interviewing there with her. And yes, had such a ball getting to know her, getting to see her home. Again, it brings her back to that subject and character storytelling point, you know, context, location, you know, color. This one hits a lot of the elements that we kind of have been talking about over the past hour. Yeah, and then this one was my favorite, and I got video of his name, and I can't quite make it out. I've listened to it so many times. But this is the lovely shepherd that we encountered on our drive back to the hotel one night. And, you know, I was telling Nina, who you've seen in the previous portrait, that I really need to get a shepherd and sheep because they were just so prevalent there in the high Atlas Mountains. And so it was something I really needed to concentrate on to, you know, fully round out my shot list, my wish list of things I wanted to get. And this was after a long day of interviews and driving around really high altitude. I think we were like 6,000 feet or so at this point. And, you know, it was the end of the day, clouds are getting a little dark. And, you know, we all looked, I remember we all looked out the left to the left windows and we saw this flock. And then we saw the shepherd. And I absolutely loved the color choices that he made. It's just a lot of cohesion, and it worked so beautifully in the environment that he was in, the blues and the greens and the grays. So yeah, no, it's just the perfect portrait subject. Gosh, I wish I remembered. I could like hear his name in the video. But so yeah, we were given permission to photograph this gentleman here, watching over his flock. And then right about the time we were getting ready to leave, a haboob, which I had never experienced before. And if you don't know what that is, it's like a wind dust storm. Blew right through, and we were all running back to the truck trying to cover the cameras. It was absolute chaos, but it was one of my absolute favorite moments of the whole trip. Yeah, it was just a lot of fun. So yeah, those are some storytelling elements that I think, if we keep in mind as photographers, it's going to make us even more attractive to clients, whoever that may be. And that, of course, applies to all elements of photography, not just fashion, not just documentary, obviously, but yeah, really across photography as a whole. And that's something, yeah, just good to keep in mind and practice and you know, build your portfolio around for sure. But yeah, so that's basically what we got. Speaking of Morocco, I have some links here. If you wanted a place to go look at and see if you wanted to help out in any way. Of course, they're experiencing unbelievable tragedy with the earthquakes. That was, just for context, a little bit further south and east than where we were based when we were there. But just absolutely horrific things happening there. So if you're able, if you're willing, please click through on a link or an organization you think that would help out, and do what we can to help them, because it's pretty bad. And of course, thank you, partners on this talk, Lumix always, Lumix especially. We're all very excited about the G9 Mark II that was announced today. Around the World in 80 Fabrics have just been an absolute godsend for me, really helping me, encouraging me, challenging me, allowing me to photograph with them has been the honor of a lifetime. We got Artisan Project here with Nina, who's hosting us there in Morocco. You can go check out some of her gorgeous rug designs. And of course, the Ainlu Cooperative, who were hosting us there in the High Atlas Mountains, and just a wonderful group of women. But yeah, that's what I got. All right, we'll pop it up here. Yeah. All right. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, here we go. Questions. Sorry, I found it. All right. Ooh, that's a good question from Kendall. Okay, so Kendall asks, is it better to have a digital portfolio, print, or both? That is a great question. I think that really depends on where you're working and who you're working with. If you are right there, I would say in the thick of it in New York, having both would be better, because some people work in quite an old school way in New York, for sure. Not okay, old school. Old school is not better or worse, but it is the way that things have been done for a long time. We'll say that. And it works. But yeah, definitely having both if you are going to present to agencies, yeah, if you're ever meeting with somebody in person, it's certainly something that's easy. It's nice to have. You don't have to rely on clicking through your phone or you following on Instagram or hold on them. Getting to skip all of that is nice, and it makes you look a lot more professional too. So yeah, so I would say it really depends. If you are meeting with somebody in person often and then showing your potential client or whoever you're working with what you can do, yeah, having print portfolio could be handy, but I don't think it's necessary most of the time. All right, and then Benjamin here says best ways for practicing the concepts presented. So in fashion photography, beauty photography, skincare, makeup, what have you, it's common practice to do what we call test shoots. And these are absolutely instrumental in building your portfolio, your brand voice, figuring out what it is that you're best at, what it is that you want to pursue as a photographer in terms of elements. So I think if you can find some team members who are in a similar position who want to build their portfolio, and put together a concept with them, some kind of story you want to tell. Again, like I've mentioned, everything from, hey, let's meet up at a park, play some basketball, preppy, back to school, everything from like the Venus flytrap beauty, like concepts can be wide ranging as long as you all come together as a team and effectively tell that story. So yeah, that's how I would suggest putting together some test shoots, but really trying to keep in mind that cohesive story. Because having a pretty picture at the end of the day is nice, but it can just kind of float there without any context, without, again, any story. So if you have something that's a lot more complete together at the end of your photo shoot, I think you're going to be better off. And that's something that's going to attract brands as well. Let's see. From Kevin, are there any specific stories that you'd like to tell that you haven't got a chance to? Like a cause that's near and dear to your heart. Oh my gosh, that's such a crazy question. That's a great question. Kevin, let's see. I have some like loose floating concepts in mind that maybe when things slow down a little bit, I still haven't recovered from the travel this summer with around the world baby fabrics, I don't think. But yeah, no, there's definitely some like artsier things I like to do, but things that are like near and dear to my heart. Oh boy. I am often attracted to women's stories, maybe particularly stories where the outside world might think of women as oppressed, and often they are in many respects, maybe compared to what we're used to here in the West, as they say. But just like these stories of quiet strength, I think are just really fascinating. And of course, hopefully bring some attention to the dignity of these women in these different places around the world, but maybe also like the things that they do to change their circumstances, to raise awareness of their circumstances. Yeah, just things like that I think are very, very attractive to me. And then of course, anything that's just really, really old. I would love to maybe be involved in an expedition where looking at something that's like thousands of years old, maybe discovering some things that would also just be a dream come true. And then from Marshall, when is continuous LED lighting a better option than strobes? What backdrop and lighting configuration is best if you planned to use AI? Okay, AI generated background. Sorry, I didn't complete the question. Gosh, Marshall, that's involved. Okay, so let's hit the LED continuous lighting first. If you are planning on providing both video and stills to a client that is very cohesive in look, for instance, like if you're on a set with a white paper backdrop, whatever color paper backdrop, and you want to offer stills and videos that are just very, very seamless from one another, I think using LED continuous lighting would be very helpful for that. Definitely utilize a tripod when you're trying to take those stills, because of course your shutter speeds might be a little low, or your ISOs might be a little high. Really depends, but yeah, I think if you're trying to incorporate seamless video and like photos, like using continuous lighting would be fantastic for that. Strobes are what I prefer. I can't say they're necessarily best, but they're what I prefer. They're best for some reasons. Stopping action, of course, reducing camera shake, unless that's something you want as a look for your story. I mean, camera shake can be a really cool, effective tool to use. A little unusual, and I like breaking the rules of photography as much as anybody. But yeah, so strobes are great for stopping action. They're great for, they're great for a lot of things, and I'm blanking on all of them. Just being able to add so many into your space, and having, you know, maybe a wider range of, you know, light output. Yeah, they're a lot of fun to use in a little. Well, maybe they're not. No, I think they are less expensive. It depends. It probably depends on the brand. But yeah, so yeah, strobes I love using. And then backdrop and lighting configuration is best if you plan on using an AI generated background. If you're talking about kind of a green screen sort of setup, which I have done in the past in the previous job, but it's not something I do currently. You know, you can light your subject and have quite a bit of space between you and the subject, and then independently light your background. You just have to make sure you're not getting so much light on your background that it's popping back onto the back of your subject's head. Yeah, I mean, the other thing too is with how advanced AI technology is, I almost would say that you could skip the green screen these days, unless you're really going for high quality. If it's for stills, you can absolutely, oh, that's a big statement. You can think about skipping the green screen aspect of it, like having Photoshop select your background and just refining that mask. If you want to pop in some AI generated elements or a full background. Yeah, it really depends, because green screen can create a lot of kickback of green onto your subject, and like especially in hair, that can be maybe more challenge than it's worth. I'd leave that up to you, Marshall, but yeah, just something to play around with maybe. And then Charles, for people who don't really travel that much, do you have any tips on finding interesting, cool, impactful stories nearby? Like, I feel like there are beautiful stories in my neighborhood, but I don't know exactly where to start. Oh, that's a fantastic question. Oh man, honestly, social media is going to be at least a starting point to figuring out a lot of these stories. I don't know exactly where you're at, Charles, but I live in the DFW area, for example, and I think there are a lot of accounts that do share kind of interesting stories from their area. Small businesses is a great way to start looking into cool, impactful stories. Anybody who's come from really interesting backgrounds, you know, what is it that they're what stories are they trying to tell their customer? How they're developing their brand voice. I think the small businesses could be a really cool start. Any small organizations that you can maybe find on the internet too, might be a good spot to find some of these cool, engaging stories. Maybe there are business meetups, maybe there are, maybe that. Yes, just small organizations, small businesses, maybe a good place to start. All right, I think that's it. Am I right? All right, perfect. Cool. All right, well, thanks again, everybody. Thank you so much to Lumix for having me. And thank you, of course, to Adorama for having me as well. It has been a pleasure, as always.